fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh.
What you are witnessing here are Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, or UAPs. That's according to the US Department of Defense. In 2017, these 3 creepy infrared videos showing encounters with military fighter jets and unknown objects were released to the media. Objects which seem to display characteristics and capabilities much more advanced than anything man-made. And only a few months ago did the Pentagon officially confirm that these videos were genuine and that they are just a small part of a wider issue. The number of encounters with these unidentified objects is increasing, and now the issue is starting to shift from something out of science fiction to a genuine concern for national security. But just how credible are these videos? They were recorded by the military, but are they capturing the real deal? Are these really the first ever genuine UFO sightings caught on camera? Well, in order to answer that question, you first have to understand where the footage came from. Supposed encounters with extraterrestrial beings have been occurring for thousands of years. They are a popular feature in entertainment and science fiction, and this love of the third kind often translates into our way of thinking. Whenever something that seems to defy explanation occurs, speculation about aliens is never far from the topic of discussion. Curious dimming around a star in our galaxy must be an alien megastructure. A radio telescope picks up a flash of energy from space, must be aliens trying to communicate. And perhaps most of all, a bright light appears in the sky, it must be a UFO. So-called encounters with unidentified flying objects are very common, in which the beholder witnesses an aircraft that is supposedly not from this world, and they always seem to share a few characteristics. Either a cylindrical or round object which hovers and darts around, or a fast-moving bright light in the sky, or perhaps both. The thing is, however, most of these incidents are easily explained, and there are dozens of potential reasons and counter-arguments that must be considered before you jump to the conclusion of aliens. Most UFO sightings are usually down to an error of perception, mistaken lights, aircraft, or natural phenomena, and even perhaps with a little help from the eye of the beholder. But not every case can be explained in this manner. Some do, to this day, genuinely defy explanation, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is alien in origin. Unidentified aerial crafts could just as easily be some sort of new technology developed by a rogue nation. And so naturally, the government needs to pay just a little bit of attention to these stories, just in case that a real threat emerges one day. This was particularly evident in the mid-1900s, when in 1947 a spike in UFO sightings occurred during the summer months. Fearing that the United States would be open to attack without follow-up in place, they created Project Blue Book. Blue Book was a series of studies by the US Air Force conducted over a 21-year period. They investigated over 12,000 supposed sightings of UFOs to determine if a genuine threat had been observed. Most of the investigations managed to establish an alternative explanation, mostly misinterpretations of stars and planes. Over 700 of the investigations still remain as unidentified, but of the objects described, none were ruled to possess any capabilities which could threaten US national security. And so, in 1968, the project concluded. But even though the project stopped, the number of sightings among pilots and Navy personnel didn't, and there was now no way for them to report or follow up on any potential encounter. As technology improved over the years, it soon became clear that something needed to be done if the US was to safeguard itself from new technology. And in 2007, a new initiative was set up, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or AATIP or AATIP. The AATIP was created to investigate all the previously undocumented encounters and sightings with unidentified objects, and determine the potential risk it could pose to national security. Pretty similar to Project Blue Book, but this time with much better technology to record and analyse these encounters. The program was funded by off-the-books anonymous funding, also known as black money. Democrat Senator Harry Reid was the one who made the official request for funding from the US budget, and he was granted just over $20 million. Most of this cash went in a contract to a company called Bigelow Aerospace, run by Robert Bigelow, avid alien advocate and billionaire campaign contributor to Harry Reid. They then appointed military intelligence official Luis Elizondo to oversee the program's operations as they interviewed pilots and visited sites where these supposed incidents had taken place. Each investigation required a threat assessment, and in doing so, the program came up with 5 conditions a UFO has to meet in order to be classified as such. The first is the craft's ability to fly without any means of propulsion or lift. Crafts on Earth usually have engines and flight surfaces, so anything that can maneuver without these things would be very unusual if it were man-made. The second is the craft's capacity for instantaneous acceleration, darting off at a high speed from a slow or stationary position. The third is focused on this speed. Can it reach hypersonic velocities of more than 3,000 miles per hour? Fourth is its observability. Can it evade and conceal itself from radar? And finally, its capacity for transmedium travel, its ability to handle air, sea and space seamlessly without changing its mechanics or body shape. These 5 observables, as they were called, placed the focus on each of the investigations on the capabilities of the craft. The question of its origin would come later. Most of the AATIP's investigations are still classified, but in 2017, details of 3 encounters were released to the press. These are the Pentagon UFO videos I played at the start, which show encounters with Navy pilots and unidentified crafts from 2004 and 2015. By far the most famous of the known investigations is the USS Nimitz encounter, which took place on the 14th of November 2004. It occurred when Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate were on a routine training mission, flying 2 Boeing FA-18 Super Hornet jets, a completely badass type of plane capable of reaching just under 2,000 kilometers an hour. The story goes that they were flying off the coast of San Diego when they were contacted by an operator aboard the USS Princeton to ask if they were carrying weapons. When the pilots confirmed that they were not, the operator directed them to a nearby location to investigate a mysterious aircraft, which had appeared on radar at 80,000 feet and plummeted down to 20,000 feet before dropping off again. The jets travelled to the area, and at first, neither pilot could see anything, but then Fravor looked down at the sea below and noticed that the waves were churning, and just above that he spotted a small object. He has long described this object as like a tic-tac, 40 feet long and whitish in appearance. When he descended to take a closer look, the object accelerated away like nothing he had ever seen. After losing the object, the jets were called to a rendezvous point about 60 miles away, but only a third of the way into their journey, the operator aboard the Princeton had said that the object had appeared back on radar at the rendezvous point, completely outrunning the jets. By the time the FA-18 planes managed to catch up, it was nowhere to be seen. Fravor was understandably rattled about his experience, and he recalls in his pilot's report that following the incident, nobody aboard the Nimitz took him seriously. He wrote that people made fun of him, playing UFO and alien videos, and so he became determined to speak up. 3 years on, and the AATIP formed and investigated the incident, interviewing him for his take on the encounter. The craft seemed to satisfy most of the 5 observables, and an infrared recording of a similar looking object was recorded on that same day. And so, for the first time, and unlike any other Project Blue Book investigation, the AATIP concluded that Fravor had encountered technology that the United States could not defend itself against. Harry Reid saw this as evidence that the program was a complete success, and requested further funding and secrecy in 2009, but in 2012 the program was terminated. Despite its termination, however, Elizondo continued to work at the Pentagon with Navy officials for another 5 years, investigating UFO incidents. During this time, the number of pilots who were coming forward about their encounters increased, and it became clear just how big an issue this was. Each of these encounters was recorded by infrared sensory equipment aboard the pilot's aircraft, and these recordings made up a key part of each investigation, but most have never been released. But 5 years after the AATIP program was terminated, Luis Elizondo resigned from his position in protest regarding the lack of attention that was being given to the issue. He then joined a private venture called To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, and in late 2017, Elizondo started going public about the AATIP's operations, and revealed short clips from the footage taken during these encounters to the media. 2 unsettling videos appeared in an investigative report by the New York Times, and another video from 2015 was released in March of the following year. Now we have 3 infrared videos. All 3 were recorded using an AATIP infrared sensor and tracking system, one of the most advanced of its kind. While shorter than the original videos, all 3 have remained unaltered and preserved in their original form as it was when it was recorded by the cockpit instruments. The first of the videos is FLIR.mp4, the only public footage from the 2004 USS Nimitz encounter. In the video, the jet pursues an object similar in appearance to the one Fravor encountered. The sensor brakes lock a few times trying to track the object, before it rapidly shifts out of scope to the left. Next, we have Gimbal.wmv, by far the most famous of the 3 videos. It was recorded in 2015 on an undisclosed date. The jets follow a distorted oval-shaped object with small protrusions on either side. It also appears to show some sort of aura or heat signature around the object. Then it captures the object as it slows and rotates over 100 degrees without changing altitude or without any form of propulsion. Finally, we have GoFast.wmv, another video recorded in 2015 showing the pilot attempting to lock his tracking system onto a small, incredibly fast-moving object over the waves. The source of all 3 of these objects is unknown. These videos have been circulating in the media for little under 3 years now, and in April 2020, the US Department of Defense officially declassified the videos. Their statement doesn't give any indication as to what the objects might be, rather it simply states that the videos are theirs, and that the objects are classed as unidentified aerial phenomena. This makes these the first ever official UFO videos released by the government, with probably hundreds of other infrared recordings of these encounters still classified. A spokeswoman from the Pentagon admitted that these videos were part of a larger issue of an increasing number of range incursions by UAPs in recent years. For many people, this is enough. Spooky, unidentified crafts with never before seen capabilities captured by the military on camera. I mean, what could be more credible than that? Irrespective of origin, many alien advocates think that this is some sort of drone, a type of unmanned aerial vehicle and a technology we have really begun to adopt as a species over the last 20 years. Because drones are unmanned, you need not worry about protecting the pilot or securing the environment. As such, many believe that this is the main way in which an advanced civilization would explore a galaxy, creating drones which move from one system to another, replicating and collecting data. But then, it seems a bit far-fetched to say that's what's going on here. Even if they are drones, that doesn't make them extraterrestrial. The immediate worry for the Department of Defense is that this could be some sort of new technology by a foreign military. Earlier this year, a spokesperson from the Office of Naval Intelligence stated that the release of the full-length videos would cause exceptionally grave damage to the national security of the United States. Perhaps this is indicative that they know something we don't. Another possibility is that the objects in these videos may not even be aircraft. Many have suggested that one or a series of instrumental anomalies as a result of the tracking system could have contributed to the perceived abilities of the objects. All 3 videos were taken using infrared cameras, which does not create an accurate representation of the same seen in visible light. The heat signatures captured from an object on these systems may appear to be much larger and closer than the actual source. It's also worth mentioning that the infrared glare from things like standard passenger aircraft can also appear to be much bigger and more distorted on infrared cameras. While these sensor systems may be some of the most advanced technology in the world, they are in a tricky environment, and all sorts of weird effects can be seen as a result of the sensors panning, zooming and locking at supersonic speeds. If this is the case, then it opens the door to an entirely new class of observational and interpretive errors. These videos are the defining features of the case, but they have been misrepresented by the media over the years. There have been several reports by the New York Times and many subsequent news outlets which present the gimbal footage with David Fravor's account of the USS Nimitz incident, making the two seem related and self-reinforcing, when this actually couldn't be further from the truth. The gimbal footage and the USS Nimitz encounter are separate, unrelated incidents which happened 11 years apart. Therefore, Fravor's story about the incredible aerial acrobatics performed by the Tic Tac UFO, which seems to fit so nicely with the gimbal footage, is precisely that, a story. The only known video of the USS Nimitz incident was actually taken from a separate jet later on that day in a follow-up encounter. It was Fravor who confirmed that the object in the video was the same as the one he encountered earlier on that day, but there really is no evidence to back this up. The video shows an object which is at least somewhat consistent with Fravor's description, but it doesn't show much in the way of the incredible capabilities in his account. The only real manoeuvre it shows is when the object moved leftwards out of scope, but this doesn't look like a straightforward thrust, it looks more like the sensor losing track of the object. This could be explained by the sensor reaching the limit of its panning angle and resetting, and is evidenced by the fact that the motion to the left is consistent with the bank angle of the F/A-18. Therefore, while his story is a fascinating one, the FLIR video does not back up or confirm Fravor's account of the USS Nimitz encounter. The object being shown in this video is, in all likelihood, the aura of a distant jet or aeroplane, which Fravor wrongly identified as the craft he had encountered earlier that day. Consequentially, with no video evidence to back up his account, you have to start questioning its authenticity. Fravor's story has differed from source to source over the years. For example, in an interview to the New York Times, he described the craft as having spotted it hovering 50 feet above the water. In another, earlier report, he claimed that the object was hovering over disturbed water at about 1,000 feet. This isn't to accuse him of being a liar, but he has been telling the same UFO story for over 16 years. Each time the mysterious alien details remain fresh in his mind, while his actual recollection of the event fades further away. Perhaps subtle psychological effects, such as the Mandela effect, have played a part in just how otherworldly those craft's abilities appeared to be. As we mentioned earlier, Fravor noted that he was made fun of by his fellow crew members after the incident, which is what led him to start making notes and preparing his case, at which point you have to start questioning how much his personal pride played a role in his recollection of the event. Because of the lack of authentic video evidence to lend credence to Fravor's story, it is much more likely that the cause of the Nimitz encounter was a series of observational and instrumental errors and anomalies. In any case, there is simply not enough solid evidence to warrant hypotheses about aliens as the cause of the Nimitz encounter. Similarly, the third video released to the public, Go Fast, is just as flimsy and inconclusive as the FLIR video. It is only about 30 seconds long, and you cannot make out any distinct features on whatever is being tracked, and so it is impossible to make any assumptions as to what it might be. There are no changes in altitude or heading, and so this straight unidirectional flight of a tiny object could also be merely an error of perception. The craft could be a slow-moving object, such as a weather balloon, or even a relatively fast-moving bird, but because of the speed at which the jets are moving as they lock onto it, it appears to be moving incredibly quickly against the backdrop of the sea. As such, the Go Fast video can also be considered insufficient evidence to support jumping to the conclusion of aliens. So that's 2 out of the 3 videos, but the hardest one to explain is the most famous, Gimbal. It is by far the closest encounter with one of these UAPs. We can make out a shape, a flight pattern, and its speed with much more accuracy. We can also see a heat signature around the object, which to the stars suggests could be a type of energy field. It also performs the seemingly near impossible rotation in midair, by far the most sophisticated manoeuvre captured on any of the 3 videos. These things all make the Gimbal video feel much more real and creepy, when in actual fact, all of these things may actually be indicative of instrumental and observational errors. Let's start with the shape, a dark object with protrusions on each side. While it vaguely resembles our anthropocentric idea of a flying saucer, this shape is consistent with the infrared glare from a distant fighter jet or passenger plane. Not only do they appear similar, but the so-called aura around the object would actually support this theory as well, as jets give off the same kind of glow on infrared sensors. But then, if it is a distant jet, what about the rotation? Well, this could also be explained by the motion of the infrared sensor. The sensors aboard fighter jets rotate like this, and therefore the rotation of the object is likely to be the infrared glare rotating with the camera. The reason the horizon doesn't rotate with it is because the cockpit display instrument tracks the motion of the camera to ensure the horizon is always aligned with the observable line of sight for the pilot. Scientist and debunker Mick West does a great experiment where he shows how a rotating lens can cause a glare rotation in a manner similar to the way in which gimbal rotates, while using a motion tracker to keep the image aligned with our point of view. West also does some geometric calculations to show that not only is the rotation consistent with the glare hypothesis, but the source of the object wouldn't even need to be manoeuvring to create this illusion. Like FLIR, the object in this image is most likely to be the glow of a distant fighter jet or passenger plane, which looks like a UFO and appears to be doing these amazing things merely thanks to the trickery of the sensor system. In truth, we'd need to see more of the classified videos in order to confirm or disprove any counter-argument, but from our perspective, and given the similarities of the object to a fighter jet's heat signature, this video can also be considered insufficient evidence of alien designs. It's fair to say that when I started researching this case, I really wanted to believe. But as is usually the case, the most boring answer is usually the right one, and UFO videos are almost always explainable by some other means. There are so many possibilities for error, misinterpretation, inaccurate recollection, and perhaps even undocumented natural phenomena. Media hype has also played a part in this case. The New York Times in particular has been criticised for pushing the UFO narrative and omitting plausible natural explanations in favour of a fantastical one, simply because it's more enjoyable and impactful to believe. Ultimately, it's hard for us to come to conclusions with this mystery as we are missing some key information. Perhaps the full-length recordings of these videos and other investigations might show something more authentic. But for now, it's far too early to be genuinely considering aliens. But with that said, whether it is a real UFO or not, no case has ever made such a significant impact on the world. And perhaps in the years to come, more light will be shed on the case should the Pentagon choose to disclose more information. For now though, aliens and UFOs will remain just a human idea. In the future though, who knows?